One train line, no weapons, no soldiers, no invasion, yet an empire treated it as a threat to its survival. This is the story of how a single railway project challenged global power, and how stopping it reshaped the world for generations. This was never about a train, it was about control. Empires are not built only with armies. They are built with systems, trade routes, shipping lanes, ports, choke points. For over a century, Britain understood this better than anyone. Its power did not come from size alone. It came from reach. The oceans were its highways. The seas were its borders. If trade moved by water, Britain could watch it, tax it, control it. And if a nation depended on those routes, it depended on Britain. That was the foundation of the empire. But in the early 20th century, something changed. Technology made it possible to move goods without ships. Railways began stitching continents together. Steel tracks could do what fleets once did, but quietly and without asking permission. One project in particular alarmed British planners: a railway stretching across Europe into the Middle East. A line that could move goods, resources, and influence from one end of the continent to the other without touching the sea, without touching British power. On paper, it looked like progress: faster transport, economic development, modern infrastructure. But empires do not fear progress. They fear independence. This railway threatened to break the logic of British dominance. If goods could move by land, naval supremacy mattered less. If regions could trade directly, colonial dependency weakened. If influence traveled on rails instead of ships, Britain could no longer act as the gatekeeper. For an empire built on control of access, this was intolerable. Britain could not openly attack a railway project. There was no battlefield, no declaration of war, so it used other tools: diplomacy, pressure, intervention. The goal was not to destroy the railway directly. The goal was to make the region too unstable for it to ever function properly. Instability, after all, is the enemy of infrastructure. As tensions rose, conflicts multiplied. Borders were redrawn. Alliances shifted. Local divisions were deepened rather than resolved. Lines were drawn on maps that ignored communities, histories, and realities. These lines were not meant to bring peace. They were meant to be managed. Fragile borders are easier to control than stable societies. The railway stalled, not because it was impossible, but because the environment around it had become too volatile. What could have connected regions instead fragmented them. What could have brought prosperity instead brought dependency. The train never became what it could have been, but the damage was already done. The strategy succeeded. The threat was neutralized. But the consequences spread far beyond the tracks. Regions that might have integrated economically were left divided politically. Trade networks that could have unified markets were replaced with artificial boundaries. Conflicts hardened along those lines. Decades passed. Empires faded, but the instability remained. The irony is this: Britain did not destroy the world in a single moment. It made a series of rational decisions based on short-term control. Each decision made sense in isolation. Together, they created a legacy of fragmentation. The train was stopped, but the consequences kept moving. Today, many of the world's most persistent conflicts follow the same paths, the same borders, the same fault lines. Not because history demanded it, but because power once feared a train. Infrastructure was treated as a threat. Unity was treated as danger. Stability was sacrificed for dominance. History often remembers wars. It remembers battles and treaties and leaders. But it rarely remembers the quiet decisions, the ones made in offices, over maps, far from the people who would live with the results. This was one of those decisions, and its effects are still with us, because sometimes the most destructive choices are not made with bombs, but with pens. And sometimes the world is changed not to win a war, but to stop a train.